Hello everyone and welcome back to Chill English Channel. We're really happy you're here with us today, taking a quiet moment to relax, learn something new, and improve your English step by step in a calm and simple way.
Hi everyone. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Whether you're at home, outside, or just taking a short break from your day, we're really glad you chose to spend this time learning together with us.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Jake.
And today, we're going to talk about something very real, something that almost everyone experiences at different times in their life.
That's right. Today's topic is stay motivated even when it's hard.
This is not just an English lesson where you learn vocabulary or sentence patterns.
It's also something that can help you in your daily life, especially when you're trying to build better habits or reach your goals.
Because motivation is something we all need when we want to improve or achieve something important.
But at the same time, motivation is not something that always stays with us.
Some days you feel excited and ready to take action.
You feel focused, clear, and full of energy.
But other days, everything feels a little heavier.
You feel tired, distracted, or maybe even a bit unmotivated.
And during those moments, it becomes difficult to continue.
You might delay your work, avoid your tasks, or suddenly decide to do something else.
Like checking your phone for just 1 minute.
Yes, and somehow that 1 minute becomes 20 minutes.
That happens to many people.
And it doesn't mean you're lazy or not capable.
It simply means you're human.
So before we go deeper into today's topic, let's take a moment to understand one important question.
What exactly is motivation?
Motivation is the reason why you decide to do something.
It's the internal energy that pushes you to take action.
For example, if you want to learn English, your motivation might be connected to your future.
Maybe you want a better job, or you want to travel more comfortably.
Or you want to feel confident when speaking with other people.
That reason gives direction to your actions.
And it gives you a sense of purpose.
But here's something very important to understand.
Motivation is not stable.
It changes from day to day.
Sometimes it's strong, and sometimes it's very low.
And when motivation becomes low, many people stop taking action.
Not because they don't know what to do,
but because they don't feel like doing it.
That feeling can be very powerful.
So today, we're not just talking about motivation itself.
We're talking about something more practical.
How to stay motivated even when things feel difficult or uncomfortable.
Even when you feel tired, distracted, or not ready.
Because real progress doesn't come from feeling motivated all the time.
It comes from continuing even when motivation is not there.
Let me ask you something, Jake.
Okay, I'm ready.
Do you always feel motivated when you have something important to do?
Honestly, no. There are many times when I don't feel motivated at all, especially when a task feels difficult or boring.
That's very honest, and I think many people can relate to that.
Yes, and in the past, I used to wait until I felt ready before starting anything.
And what usually happened when you waited?
Most of the time, I just kept delaying things and the task became more stressful over time.
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it's like the task gets bigger in your mind the longer you avoid it.
Exactly, and sometimes it feels even harder than it actually is.
But over time, I realized something important.
What did you realize?
I realized that I don't actually need motivation to begin.
That's a very powerful idea.
Instead of waiting to feel motivated, I can take a small action first.
And what happens after you take that small action?
Usually, I start to feel a little more focused and it becomes easier to continue.
So, in a way, action creates motivation.
Exactly, not the other way around.
That's something many people don't realize.
They think, I need to feel ready before I start.
But that feeling doesn't always come.
And so they keep waiting.
And waiting.
And nothing really changes.
So let's begin with our first important idea.
Way number 1, don't wait for motivation.
This might sound simple, but it's very powerful when you apply it in real life.
Many people believe motivation comes first and then action follows.
But in many situations, it works in the opposite way. Action comes first, and motivation follows.
Let's imagine a simple situation,
You need to study or work on something important.
but you don't feel like doing it.
You feel tired, maybe a little distracted.
And you tell yourself, I'll start later.
But later becomes even later.
Yes, and the task stays there.
And sometimes it becomes more stressful because now you have less time.
So instead of waiting, you try something different.
You start with a very small step.
For example, you open your book and read just one page.
Or you write one simple sentence.
Something very small and manageable.
And once you begin, something interesting happens naturally.
Your mind starts to focus,
You feel a little more engaged.
and it becomes easier to continue.
That's because action creates momentum.
And momentum helps you keep going.
So remember this idea.
You don't need to feel ready.
You just need to begin.
Now let's move to another important idea.
Way number 2. Understand your why.
Sometimes we lose motivation because we forget the reason behind what we're doing,
The task feels boring or difficult.
or even meaningless.
And when something feels meaningless, it's very hard to stay motivated.
That's why your why is so important.
Your why is your reason, your purpose.
It's the deeper meaning behind your actions.
For example, if you think, I have to study English, it can feel like pressure.
But if you think, I want to improve my future, it feels more meaningful.
It feels more personal.
And that small change in thinking can make a big difference.
Because now you are choosing to do it, not just forcing yourself.
Let's try another example.
Imagine you want to exercise regularly.
If you think, I have to exercise, it feels like a burden.
But if you think, I want to feel stronger and healthier, it feels more positive.
And that gives you more energy to continue.
So here's a useful question you can ask yourself.
Why does this matter to me?
When you answer that question clearly, you reconnect with your purpose.
And that helps you stay motivated, even when things feel difficult.
Now let's continue with another important idea that connects very closely to this.
Way number 3, make it easy to begin.
Many people lose motivation because tasks feel too big or overwhelming.
When something feels too big, your brain naturally wants to avoid it.
That's a normal reaction.
So instead of trying to do everything at once, you make the task smaller.
Much smaller.
For example, instead of saying, I will study for 2 hours,
You can say, I will study for 10 minutes.
that feels much easier.
And when something feels easy, you're more likely to start.
And starting is the most important step.
Because once you start, continuing becomes easier.
So if we connect these 3 ideas together,
You don't wait for motivation.
you remember your reason.
And you make the first step simple and easy.
These ideas help you move forward, even on difficult days.
And once you begin, you may notice something interesting happening naturally.
You may notice that your energy slowly starts to change, even if just a little at first.
Yes, and sometimes it's a very small change, but it's enough to keep you moving.
And that small movement is very important.
Because staying still is what keeps you stuck.
But even with these strategies, there are still days when everything feels difficult.
Days when even small tasks feel heavy.
Days when you don't feel focused at all.
And that's something we need to talk about honestly.
Because those days are part of the process.
They're not a mistake.
They're not a failure.
They're just difficult moments.
So let's move to the next important idea.
Way number 4. Accept difficult days.
This is something many people struggle with.
Because we often expect ourselves to feel good and motivated every day.
But that's not realistic.
Some days will feel easy,
And some days will feel very hard.
and that's completely normal.
The problem is not the difficult day.
The problem is how we react to it.
For example, imagine you wake up feeling tired,
You don't feel like studying or working,
and you say to yourself, today is not a good day.
so you do nothing.
And then maybe the next day, the same thing happens.
And slowly, you lose your rhythm.
But what if you approached it differently?
Instead of saying, I can't do anything today,
You say, I will do something small today,
even if it's just 5 minutes,
even if it's not perfect.
that small action keeps you connected to your goal.
And that connection is very important.
because once you disconnect completely, it becomes harder to return.
So, on difficult days, don't try to do everything.
Just try to do something.
Even a little progress is still progress.
And those small actions build consistency over time.
Let me ask you something, Jake.
Sure.
What do you do when you have one of those difficult days?
Honestly, I try to lower my expectations a little.
That's interesting.
Instead of trying to do everything perfectly, I focus on doing something simple.
That makes sense.
For example, if I plan to work for 2 hours, I might just do 20 minutes.
And how does that feel?
It feels much easier to start, and once I begin, sometimes I even do more than I expected.
That's a great approach.
And even if I don't do more, I still feel good because I didn't stop completely.
That's very important.
Because stopping completely is what breaks momentum.
And momentum is what helps you stay consistent.
Now let's move to another important idea that connects to this.
Way number 6, build small habits.
Motivation can come and go, but habits are more stable.
A habit is something you do regularly, often without thinking too much about it.
For example, brushing your teeth.
You don't need motivation to do it.
You just do it automatically.
Imagine if your important tasks became like that.
That would make things much easier.
Exactly. You wouldn't need to ask yourself, do I feel motivated today?
You would just begin.
So, how do you build a habit?
You start small and repeat it regularly.
For example, instead of studying for hours once a week,
You study for 10 or 15 minutes every day.
that might seem small, but it's very powerful.
Because consistency is more important than intensity.
Let's say that again in a simple way.
Small actions, repeated daily, create strong results.
And over time, those small actions become natural.
You don't need to think too much.
You don't need strong motivation,
You just follow your routine,
and that reduces resistance.
which makes it easier to continue.
Let's connect this idea with a real-life example.
Imagine someone wants to improve their English.
If they study for 3 hours one day,
You then do nothing for the next 5 days.
that's not very effective.
But if they study for 15 minutes every day,
They build a habit,
and that habit creates long-term progress,
slowly but surely.
step by step.
Now let's move to another important idea.
Way number 6, be kind to yourself.
This is something many people forget,
Yes, especially when they make mistakes.
or when they lose motivation.
They start to criticize themselves.
They say things like, I'm lazy, or I'm not disciplined.
But those thoughts don't help,
They actually make things worse,
because negative thinking reduces your energy.
and it makes it harder to start again.
So instead of being critical, try to be supportive.
Talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend.
For example, instead of saying, I failed,
You can say, I had a difficult day.
or I can try again,
That small change in language is powerful,
because it changes how you feel.
and how you feel affects what you do next.
Let's try a quick example.
Okay.
Imagine you planned to study today, but you didn't do it.
In the past, you might say, I'm so lazy.
But now you can say, I didn't do it today, but I can start tomorrow.
That feels much more positive.
And it helps you move forward instead of getting stuck.
Exactly. Now, let's take a moment to connect all these ideas together.
We talked about accepting difficult days
Building small habits.
and being kind to yourself,
These ideas help you stay consistent over time,
not just for one day.
but for weeks, months, and even years.
And that's where real change happens,
Not in one big action.
but in many small actions repeated over time.
And when you start thinking this way, something changes.
You stop focusing only on motivation,
And you start focusing on consistency.
which is much more reliable.
And much more powerful in the long term.
And once you begin to build that consistency, you may start to notice another important shift in how you think and act.
And that quiet shift in your mindset is often where real, lasting progress truly begins.
Yes, because at that point, you're no longer depending only on motivation.
You're building something stronger.
A system, a habit, and a way of thinking that supports you every day.
And that makes everything more stable.
Even when life feels busy or difficult.
Let me ask you something, Jake.
Sure,
Do you think motivation is necessary at all?
that's a good question. I think motivation is helpful, especially at the beginning when you're starting something new.
That makes sense.
It gives you that first push, that initial energy.
But after that, something else becomes more important.
Yes, consistency and discipline.
And also having a simple system you can follow every day.
Exactly. Something you can repeat even when you don't feel like it.
Especially when you don't feel like it.
Yes, those are the most important moments.
Now let's talk a little about how you can express these ideas in English.
Because this is also an English learning lesson.
Let's start with a simple sentence pattern.
The pattern is, I feel unmotivated when blank.
For example, I feel unmotivated when I'm tired.
Or, I feel unmotivated when a task feels too big.
Here's another useful one. I stay motivated by blank.
For example, I stay motivated by remembering my goals.
Or, I stay motivated by taking small steps every day.
These are very natural and useful sentences.
And you can use them in real conversations.
Let's try a short dialogue together.
Okay.
Do you always feel motivated?
No, not always. Sometimes I feel tired or distracted.
So what do you do in those moments?
I try to start with something small and simple.
That's a good idea.
Yes, and I also remind myself why my goals are important.
That sounds very natural.
And very realistic. Now, let's take a moment to reflect.
Think about your own life.
What do you usually lose motivation for?
Is it studying?
Work?
Building a new habit?
Or something else?
Now ask yourself this simple question.
What is one small action I can take today?
Not tomorrow.
Not next week.
Today.
Because action always starts in the present moment.
And remember, you don't need to feel motivated to begin.
You just need to take one small step.
Because small steps create momentum.
And momentum creates progress.
Over time, that progress becomes something meaningful.
Something you can see and feel.
And that's what keeps you going.
Before we finish, let's do one final review.
Number 1, don't wait for motivation.
Number 2, remember your why.
Number 3, make it easy to start.
Number 4, accept difficult days.
Number 5, build small habits.
Number 6, be kind to yourself.
These ideas are simple,
But when you use them regularly, they can create real change.
not instantly, but gradually.
And that's how lasting improvement happens.
Now it's your turn.
We have a question for you.
What helps you stay motivated when things feel difficult?
And which of these ideas will you try first?
You can write your answer like this.
I feel unmotivated when blank, but I will try blank.
Write your answer in the comments.
We always enjoy reading your thoughts.
And it's a great way to practice your English.
If you found this lesson helpful, don't forget to like this video.
And share it with someone who might need a little motivation today.
Also, subscribe to Chill English channel.
Your support helps us continue creating calm and useful lessons for you.
And for learners all around the world.
Keep practicing a little every day.
Stay consistent.
And remember,
You don't have to be perfect.
you just have to keep going.
Step by step.
See you in the next lesson.
Goodbye, everyone.